All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Revamp Project. Really excited to have you guys on here with us today. This is the first episode of a new series, really excited about. So I am your host of this show. It'll be a podcast also. And I'm beyond excited to be here with you for our first show. So the Revamp Project is about finding your unique ability, or as a lot of people like to refer to it, your superpower. So revamping yourself and sharpening your superpowers and sharing them with the world. So I really think that this is one of the most important things that not a lot of people are talking about. You have a superpower, and maybe you know what it is, but the fact is most people don't. So what do collectively? We just copy what others are doing, and then we compare ourselves to other people. And everybody knows that comparison is pretty much the best way to be unhappy with yourself and with all of life. But don't worry, we're going to unpack a lot about that in the show and even more in the series as we bring in some of the highest achievers in their respective fields in the professional world. So again, I'm your host, Drew Farnese. I've been in the real estate investing world for about 8 years now, and I've grown a couple 7-figure companies, and I've been through a lot of the highs. I've been through the lowest lows. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on self-improvement and business-related things and self-development. And I've been a part of a lot of mastermind groups, and a lot of the most important, profound things that I learned on my journey, I want to share that stuff with you guys here entirely free. So, little disclaimer, the show is going to be weighted in real estate for sure. Given my background, but it's not just gonna be for people in the real estate world. This is gonna be for anyone who's striving for more, searching for fulfillment, and everyone that wants the best version of themselves, to be the best version of themselves. I truly believe that we all owe it to ourselves and to the rest of the world to be the best version of ourselves. So, without further ado, again, I'm so excited. I'm all amped up here. When I thought about creating this show and really wanting to come in with a bang and be able to deliver as much value to our listeners and viewers as possible, I really only thought of one person that came to mind, and I knew that he had to be the first person to come on the show with us. And I'm so excited. So this guy, I met him in 2019 at a mastermind event in New York City. And from the moment I met him, I just knew that he was going to make an impact in my life. And I knew that he was going to make a huge impact in the world with what he was capable of. So this man has gotten his feet wet in a few industries and ventures that I'm sure we're going to touch on a little bit here today. But he made a real big splash when he went into the fix and flip space. And then what I'm so excited to talk about is the tidal wave that he made when he started sharing his gift with the world and showing others how to make it in such a tough industry. So if you've ever heard the term pop top or at a level, then you probably know our guest already, Mr. Gabe DaSilva. How do we transfer here? There we go. There he is. Gabe DaSilva, everyone.
Hey, buddy. Thanks for having me on, man. I'm psyched.
Yeah, man. Good morning. So glad to have you on here and get to talk with you about some of the things that I know we've shared privately a lot. And I've always loved our conversations. We get pretty deep into things, and being able to share some of that with viewers. Yeah. Can't speak this morning, with viewers and listeners here. I'm super excited about it.
It's allergy meds.
I know, man. I know. I should have taken them a little bit earlier, and I didn't. So, Gabe, take us back to the start, man. How did your journey into the business world begin?
So my foray into entrepreneurship goes back a decade. February of this year was 10 years as an entrepreneur, and it started in the food space. I just I'd gotten tired of working the cube farm, and I mean, there's a whole host of things that happened over the course of about 18 months leading up to the day I ultimately left. But I think subconsciously, like, I knew I wasn't living up to my potential sitting in this cube, pushing paper around. I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. And over time, that forced me to look for something bigger, look for something different, something that excited me. I know that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm focusing on that rather than the tactical parts of the exit. And maybe we'll go back to that. But
sure.
But it took a prompting, I guess is what I'm saying. And ultimately I left and started a restaurant. And so like I said, in the food space, I owned and operated a restaurant for 4 years. I ultimately sold that to a partner and then transitioned over into real estate, doing pop tops, at a level stuff you referenced in the intro. But yeah, I think if you want me to unpack some of those stories, we can do that. And maybe that's where a lot of the listeners are. It might be valuable to them to hear that piece. You tell me where you want to go from
here.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I would love to start at the beginning because I'm sure that's where a lot of people are. I talk with people all the time, every day, all day. I'm sure you do as well, that are still in that mindset of, oh yeah, well, I have a job and I feel like I can do more or I want more. And they're afraid to make that first step and everything into starting a business, whether it's real estate or a restaurant. So yeah, if you could unpack that a little bit more, like when you were still working, before you jumped into the business world at all, like what do you think it really was within you that you felt?
Yeah, I mean, I think at a soul level, we all know we're created for more. And if you're sitting in the cube and you have that nagging feeling, like for me, it was like I couldn't breathe. It was like a slow asphyxiation. So it was very clear that I wasn't doing what I was created to do there. For others, it's not quite that severe. It's just this like lulling to sleep kind of feeling where they know in your heart that you're capable of more. But you're not quite sure what the next steps are. For me, like my hand was forced. I often tell a story. I was rushing to get to work. It was 8. I was running late. I park across the street from the building, and as I'm crossing the street to get to the building, I'm rushing, I'm running, I'm not paying attention. I step out onto the street over the curb, and a woman pulls me back, and a bus goes flying by, and in shock, I almost in like zombie mode, walk the balance of the length to the office and get to my cube and sit there. And for like a couple of minutes, hour, I don't even know. It was a blur. I just sat there thinking, what just happened, right? Like I could have been like smashed by that bus. They would have mourned me here for a week or two, and then there'd be a different ass in this seat. Like what I'm doing here is inconsequential. Right? Like I almost died rushing to get here to do this. Like this isn't what I'm created for. This isn't what I'm supposed to be doing here. And that was kind of like, that was a turning point moment for me. That was a really eye-opening experience. And beyond that came a few other, examples. I had my grandfather got sick within a couple of months of that. And we're blessed he's still around, but we didn't know at the time if he would be. It was pretty bad. My family was flying to Portugal to see him, to see how he was doing. And I had to ask permission. And I was thinking to myself, like, if someone in your family's ever sick, you have to ask someone else if you can go see them. Like what sense does that make? These are the kinds of things that started to happen for me. And that's what ultimately prompted and propelled me to take the step. And I think everyone has to have those woodshed moments, those turning point moments, and they're going to look different for each person. But, at the heart of that is that feeling internally that you're built for more. And if you sense that, then you're in the right place listening to this show. That's what, I know that's what those are the people you're seeking to serve with what you're doing here. So
that's absolutely
hopefully
right.
That helps.
Yeah, no, that's a deep story, man. I mean, something as simple, or a lot of people could view that as really small and just kind of look right past it, the event where you almost got hit by a bus, and to be able to process that and look at it deeper, and not just brush it off and say, there was almost an accident that was avoided this morning. You're able to look at it from a really deep level and say, wow, what if that was the end of me? What if I was gone tomorrow and I didn't get to do anything with my life? So that's huge, man. That's really huge. So do you think when you were still working at that job before you took the leap into the restaurant industry, were there any superpowers that you had at that point that you just didn't even know about?
Yeah, I think what the corporate or like the cube farm or what that environment is built for is to stifle creativity. It's meant to churn out a bunch of worker bees. So you're likely sitting somewhere doing a thing that you went to school for, whatever that even means these days, but like it's not your gift. It's really likely not, because unless you're super like impassioned about what it is that you're doing, like there's plenty of people who are working with kids or doing things that like they get fired up to do each and every day. That's not the stuff we're talking about. Like I was sitting there and it's almost like there was a lid on like my potential. And because the cube I worked in was brown, the carpet was brown, the desk was gray, the computer monitor was brown, like those colors aren't meant to evoke creativity. Like they're not meant for you to explore what's possible, what you're actually capable of. It's meant to churn out worker bees and to keep you there for 8 hours a day. It's mind numbing. And so my gifts were buried. And that is, I often say, like, that's the saddest thing, man. Like buried gifts are the saddest things. Like someone who's like an amazing underwater photographer and loves to do that when they're on vacation, but then comes home and is like some sort of bookkeeper or something and is miserable doing that. And like their passion is in doing underwater photography, their gift is in that, and they're not doing that. That to me is the saddest thing, is the buried gift. And my gifts were buried there.
I totally understand, man. And that's a great point, because that's some of the other things that I wanted to talk about on this show with you is, the ways that people can go about finding their unique abilities and what they're really gifted at and everything. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if you don't have the environment to be able to find those things, if you're not taking shots, if you're not learning things, failing, and going through life, you're never going to learn about yourself, really. You're really not going to learn about yourself.
So all right, around other people that'll see that in you is big. I have to credit our circle really with helping that evolve, because like that whole thing, if you're like envisioning that jar with the lid on it and that's you in that construct, whatever that is, whatever that job is now, like of course you're like, what is my gift? What's my zone of genius? What's my superpower? It's hard to even think about it because there's a freaking lid on the jar. You got to twist the lid a bit, and one of the best ways to do that is to get around other people who are going to speak life into you, who are going to identify that giftedness in you, and have those people really sell you the dream. That's how it starts, man. I genuinely believe that it has a lot to do with your circle.
I totally agree with that, man. And for our listeners, Gabe and I were a part of a mastermind group together for a long time. We were in Joe Evangelisti's group. That's how we met at that mastermind event in New York. And he's so right. I mean, having people around you that are actively seeking growth themselves. And, that's ultimately the purpose of this entire revamp project and the Facebook group and everything, is to bring people together that are really actively focused on becoming the best version of yourself. And when you're focused on that and, you're actively around other people that are seeking the same thing, you're going to learn a lot more about yourself when you see more people doing more things and taking more shots and failing, ultimately. I know for me personally, I've learned the most about myself through failures and through the hardest times in life. It sucks, right? Dealing with a lot of those things, but that's where you really have the profound realizations of, Gabe, exactly like you said, wow, I don't want to be at this job forever. I'm limiting myself. Or, wow, I really am good at this thing or that thing, and I need to share that with people, right? It's through those struggles that we have the deepest realizations. So, Gabe, I want to keep going into your journey, right? So you made that jump into the real estate world and you got into the fix and flips and pop tops. How did that all happen?
So the first foray into real estate investment, it's to piggyback on what you said, like the failures or the learning experiences in society and in schools and a lot of times with parents and things, you're taught not to fail. Like failure is not well received in the workplace, like in school. But in the entrepreneurship world, failure is the cost of doing business. If you're not failing forward, you're not moving fast enough. You're not breaking things, you're not moving fast enough. You're not growing. So that's my story. The first deal was a disaster. I went in with the hopes of doing a cosmetic rehab, doing a kitchen, 2 bathrooms, paint, carpet, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I put a bunch of day laborers in there doing demo, and day by day, they demoed increasingly more of the house than I had intended. And I wasn't catching on. Like each day it got worse, and I was like, oh, that wall went away, or oh, that room. But at the end of a week, it's like, holy hell, this house was practically gutted. And I said, this isn't what I signed up for here. And it took me there alone on a Saturday, like in tears, looking around, like, what did I get myself into? And from that, like devastation, like from elation to devastation to like, from there, all the growth came. And that's what prompted me to see past just the cosmetics and think, okay, well, I got myself out of that. We can talk more about that if we want to go into how I did that. But ultimately, I worked through that process and realized an even larger profit than I would have made if I had done a cosmetic rehab. And that's when I said, wow, like another light switch moment for me. I'm like, well, if I'm going to be here anyway, I'm going to be like logging the time. What's the difference if I'm doing more work, but I'm generating exponentially more ROI? I'm signing up for that. And so we went from what was supposed to be a cosmetic rehab turned gut reno into an addition, into an add a level, into new construction. And that's how the evolution has happened for us.
I love it. Yeah, I definitely do want to dive deeper into that because I really think early on you may not have realized, right? But it's all about the thought process, how you take the problem that's presented to you and what you do with it. So I think really early on, as soon as you made that connection in your mind, like, okay, well, I'm going to have to pivot here. This isn't going to be the type of project that I thought it was. We have to do things differently, but because we're doing things differently, it's going to change the entire outcome. So you made that connection in your mind and you solved that problem in a really unique way. And I think that was probably one of the big building blocks to finding one of your unique abilities that you're really good at, right? So I would love to unpack that a little bit more. When you were going through that demo process, like what was going through your mind? Like what were the alternatives? What were the options in your mind?
Yeah, you nailed it. This failure, I'm using air quotes, those that can't see on video, it's like that is how I discovered one of my superpowers, one of my unique abilities, one of my gifts. The ability, first and foremost, to be gritty and to have your back against the wall and be dealt this shit sandwich and figure out how to make sense of it. Like that grittiness for sure. But then how I got systematic about picking apart what had happened and then identifying all the inefficiencies and the things that had gone wrong and then putting processes and systems in place to rectify that and then making that scalable. And it's not sexy, what I just said, but that is my gift. It's the ability to identify inefficiencies in the marketplace, in a project, and whatever it is, and then put processes and systems in place to address those inefficiencies and ultimately extract value. And that's real heady, right? That's a lot of big words that mean, like, I find things that are broken and I fix them.
Yeah.
And so that rehab was broken. I figured out how to fix that rehab. And in doing so, I said, oh shit, like, this is scalable. Like, I can run with this. And then I just got really disciplined about building out the processes and systems that would allow me to delegate and elevate things we talk about all the time, like from a business standpoint, and building a team and scaling. And that's how I started to step into my superpower, into my gift.
I love that, man. I love that. That's so awesome. So exactly that, man. It's through that failure, through dealing with the problems, having the punches coming at you from every which way, and being able to be gritty, which, by the way, I think is really one of the most important unique abilities for anybody in any business, or really in life as a whole, because life's brutal sometimes, man. Mm-hmm. Being able to have the grit to wake up, put on your shoes every day, and go back out there and kick ass again is one of the most important things. A lot of people want to quit, 12 inches from gold, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you don't, the grittiness thing is, it is like when people say define entrepreneurship in one word. For me, it's grit. It's that willingness to, like you said, show up and get kicked in the teeth day after day, but you show up again and you show up again and you show up again. And if you never quit, you only win. You only win. It's that simple. If you never quit, you only win. It's the only other option. So just keep showing up, getting better each day.
That's absolutely right, man. I love that. All right, so take us to accelerated growth throughout your real estate business, doing more projects, doing bigger projects. What happened? What was the timeline like?
So identifying that ability in me and seeing how to take that broken rehab, fix that, being able to successfully execute and exit that one deal generated a lot of momentum. So I have come now to believe that I'm capable of doing this thing, because you can't unsee the thing once you've seen it, once you've done it. And now that I've seen and done it, I said, okay, it's clearly possible when my back's against the wall. What's possible if I go into this with intention, now knowing that this is part of my superpower, now knowing that I can do this. And plenty of people will tell you that you can't. You can't scale construction heavy value add rehabs. For those in the real estate world, that means you can't do big projects. You can't do a lot of big projects at the same time. And that's absolutely not true. We've proven that to be false, because we got really systematic about how we did it. And systems are just fancy words for lists. And that's all it really took at the beginning. I didn't have all the processes we're talking about. I had a notebook and a pen, and I was documenting things. And I just said, okay, what were the steps? In what order did I do those things? And then as you're doing those things in that order multiple times, you're developing a system. And then it's about packaging the system, and then finding other people. You don't go far alone. You have to build a team. You have to bring others along for the journey, and then start empowering them to succeed, to do the things, and put the right people in the right seats. And that's what it looked like for us. Was, okay, I figured out how to do this thing. I did it alone for a little while, and then I brought on someone to support me. Then I brought on another person, and then another. And each time I was taking the things that we were doing that were working per the systems and processes we had developed, and I was like, here's what I know works. Give that to that person that you just empowered and put in that seat to do that thing, office manager, project manager, marketing manager, whatever that role looks like. And then say, this is how I know to do it based on my experience, but let's collectively work to find other opportunities to do it better, faster, cheaper, and always be open-minded, because we're always learning. That's how it evolved. That's how it's evolved over the 6 years for us.
I love it, man. I love it. I got to mention, looking behind you there, because ADD, that Thor hammer on the shelf is just awesome. I got to throw that in there.
Yeah, man.
But seriously, for me to try to keep myself on track here. So I think it would be useful for our listeners, viewers, whatever, to kind of just define what we mean when we say unique abilities, right, or superpowers. So like we mentioned a couple minutes ago, grit, I think, is a really, really important one. There's a whole lot of different ones that Gabe just demonstrated with what he's talking about here, right? Grit, perseverance, whatever you want to call it, the ability to create systems and processes, the ability to delegate. These are all things that, because I think it's worth mentioning too, that people have more than one unique ability or skill, right? It's very possible to be an expert at multiple things like this that really might be the core foundation to your success and what you build and who you are. But everybody usually has a lot of different unique abilities and superpowers. And I think it's also worth mentioning that they're not always things that you're maybe born with. I really do believe, Gabe, weigh in on this here. I really believe that there are things that can be developed, right? Like, do you think that you were natural, like you were born good at creating systems and processes?
I think I had a propensity for doing it. I'll say that in school, for me to figure out how to beat school, I was always that kid who was trying to figure out how to beat the system. I had to get like really systematic about how I took my course load on or did the work or completed the assignment. So I cultivated that skill as a child, but unknowingly, right? Sure. It takes a really aware parent to identify that in a kid and pour into that kid so they develop that skill intentionally. Most parents are busy. Like they don't necessarily know and see those things. And then kids grow into be adults and then wind up working in a cube, doing a thing to pay a check, to write a mortgage. And it's like, wait a second, what happened? Like where did that giftedness that they were born with and could have developed, where did that giftedness, superpower, that unique ability, where did it go? And it's always been there. It just has the lid on it. Back to that example, like Absolutely. The lid's just on it. And so, yeah, I agree there. I also, I agree that it's not just one thing. There's certainly one thing you do better than most anybody else. But that one thing, like for me, starts evolving, starts like, okay, it's this one thing, it's this ability to identify inefficiencies and then build processes and systems to address those inefficiencies and extract value while doing so, all that. But then it also becomes my ability to then teach that thing. Like who would have known? I've never been a leader. I've never played sports as a kid. I wasn't the team captain. I wasn't anything. So until you start developing and you start like working on this stuff, you won't know what else is really in there. Or at least that's how it's evolved for me.
No, that's such a good point. I can piggyback off that for sure. Like I'm the same way. I think going back to childhood, right? Going back to school, like you were talking about, I was a terrible student, and ADHD, right? I mean, I still deal with it today. And the funniest thing about that is what was, for me, a disadvantage when I was a kid because I couldn't focus in school. And a lot of that was they have this box, exactly like you said, that this is what you're supposed to fit in, this is what you're supposed to do, and this is how you're supposed to do it. And that just wasn't the way that my brain was wired, right? So that never really worked for me as a kid. And like just learning about myself over time by making mistakes, by taking shots in life, and just kind of processing at a deeper level. It's like, wow, why did I do a terrible job at that? Or why can't I focus, when I'm taking a test or whatever it may be? And really kind of understanding yourself. It's like, oh, well, I can't do that because I have ADHD, but you know what I can do? And I can do better than a lot of people. I can multitask like an MFer, you know, I can deal with really complex problems. And as a matter of fact, I actually need complex problems, which is one of the things we talk about in some of our mastermind groups, right? Is a lot of times entrepreneurs, we create problems for ourselves because we need complex problems to solve. So while that one may be a superpower, it can be a curse also, right? But no, that's such a good point, you know, going back to childhood. And I think that's really cool that you are able to look back to when you were a kid, and your unique ability that you say like is your number one thing that you attribute to your success, being able to look at systems, processes, find inefficiencies, and be able to streamline. You being able to go back to your childhood. What's going on here? You're flickering. Is that happening? It's flickering. I'm not sure why, but we're still live. You being able to go back to your childhood and be able to look at it from then and say, yeah, you know what? I had this same thing. I had these same skills that maybe you didn't know were skills when you were a kid. That's deep.
That takes awareness. It takes time spent later in life. Like as a kid, you're certainly not doing this. It's why I suggested that that's the parent's responsibility to identify that thing in their kid and then pour into them so that they develop it. But like later on, if that doesn't happen for you as a kid, you're not fortunate in the sense that happens for you. You get older and something has to trigger that desire to go deep and look and figure it out, or it doesn't, and you like punch the clock for 40 years and then you retire and die, right? It's kind of morbid, but that's the other option. This for me meant, hey, you did almost die. This bus almost wiped your ass out. You would have gone on to work another 10, 20, 30 years in that cube and like impacted nobody. And so when you start thinking about it, you're like, oh shit, like now it starts evolving, and that awareness evolves, and you start going deeper and deeper, and then you start remembering, you know what I used to do a lot as a kid? Like I would love to collect, and I would look at like baseball cards, but then I'd also want to know what's the value of them. So I'd go get that book that says what each card is worth, or like when I knew you could sell aluminum cans and recycle them, I was like, how can I collect as many of those as possible, crush them, pack them, and sell them? Like, so I was looking for parts and pieces, trying to bring value out of those things. You start then looking back, you know, I wasn't aware as a child, but now as an adult, I'm like, wow, look at all of those building blocks, all of those examples throughout my childhood that lead me to be, you know, to be who I am today.
I love it, man. No shit. I just got chills just thinking about that. I really think that's like a profound thing that I didn't even realize at a deep level until we're just talking about it here. Thinking back to childhood, what were a lot of the things that I did, the way that I was, the things that I was good at or not good at. And, you know, I've definitely done it to a small degree to kind of help figure out what things I'm really uniquely good at today. But as I'm thinking about it, there's probably so much more that I can go back and really understand at a deeper level about myself, and probably figure out a couple more things that would benefit me, you know?
And then you'll see them. Then you see yourself as that child doing that thing. And I'm like, it was the beginning. It was the beginning. And, you know,
and it just starts to make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you don't want to get into that place where you're like, well, if I had known, I would have really developed and cultivated that gift early on, and then I wouldn't have gone and burned 10 years working corporate. I would have gone straight into entrepreneurship because I know that's what I'm conditioned for anyway. You can't do that, you know.
Sure.
Then it works in the opposite direction, and then you wind up upset about, you know, your journey, and that's not what this is about. It's about us helping folks like identify, you know, what it is that they are the best in the world at, like what is their giftedness, and then having them step into that and leverage that and use that to impact people, to, you know, provide for their families, to freedom of purpose, like our friend Joe says, freedom of place, freedom of time. That's what we're that's the goal here, not to beat yourselves up because, oh shit, I've been sitting here stewing in this cube for 15 years. Like, that's not what this is about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a great conversation, man. I appreciate you being on here again. I just got to reiterate to everybody that I'm so excited to be able to share this time with you guys. And if you're listening, watching, whatever, really appreciate it. Our guest, Gabe DaSilva here. He's the man. And thank you for sharing with us here today, Gabe.
I'm loving this, man. I get fired up thinking about how much we can impact others by solely helping them step into their superpower. And I know that's why you're doing this. And so I hope that we're starting to get folks thinking that way. That's a big piece of why I do what I do.
I hope so too. And that was one of the things that I wanted to bring up and touch on is, we've had a lot of deep conversations in our time knowing each other, right? And one of the things that I love about you is that you are so deep. Like, we've had a lot of deep conversations that a lot of times are really meaningful, and I'm able to kind of pull a lot out and self-reflect on a lot of those things. Do you think that there was like a specific event that kind of made you think of things like that deeply and self-aware?
The thing about, like, once you see a thing, you cannot unsee that thing. That's been big for me. And that happened for me for the first time when I attended a conference. And a lot of people don't subscribe to that. What's he going to teach me that I don't already know? What's he going to teach me that I can't learn from watching the video? Well, that's the wrong way to approach it. If you believe that, then of course there's nothing to be learned. What you have to be is open. And by putting yourself in an immersive environment like a conference, for me it was a Tony Robbins event 6 years ago in California. There was no way to unsee what I saw there over the course of 4 days. And I experienced growth in that long weekend that I hadn't experienced in 20 years of adulthood, 10 years of adulthood, whatever it was at the time. And once you see a thing, you cannot unsee it. And it's like, wow, like this awareness starts to develop. And then how deep you choose to go is really person specific. Like, for me, I know that there's more in me, and I want to go there and figure it out, find out what it is so I can use it to impact and serve others. For some, they are afraid of the light within them. And so they get to a point where it's like, I could go deeper and I can unpack some more and I can figure out what I'm truly capable of. But yeah, I'm okay here. And in doing so, you're burying your gift. You're stealing from yourself, from your family, from the world. And that got real heavy for me. And I hope it's heavy on the people listening now, because you owe it. You owe it to your family, to yourself, and to the world to dig deep and figure out what you're capable of and what your superpower is, and then live in that thing and serve. So that's how it started for me.
That's so good, brother. That's so good. And I think that's where a lot of people start, right? A Tony Robbins type of event or whatever, and it just kind of makes you start to think deeper, think purpose and things like that. So that's powerful, man.
Tony says something that if you're not quite there yet, like one of his exercises for young people is they don't necessarily have all of this awareness. They haven't lived enough yet necessarily. But what they do know is what they hate. People will tell you quickly what they hate. It doesn't take much. So you start there. Start with a list of things you dislike doing, and then start looking at the opposite of that thing. That might be the thing you genuinely will love doing. So it's funny. It's the opposite of how we would approach it, but it's an exercise that he's created that he walks young people through. But it doesn't have to be a young person. It just has to be somebody who's like, I don't even know where to start. Well, just start with the shit you hate and make a list of that and then flip it. And likely with the opposite of the things you hate are the things you love. I hated wearing a tie. I hated working in a cube. And I wear t-shirts, I wear hats backwards. I would never, ever go back to the cube farm. That's just a non-negotiable for me. I value freedom far, far too much. So anyway, that's a good exercise.
That's so good, man.
People are like, where do I start?
Start with the things you hate and go to the opposite. I love it. That's a awesome, simple tip. If you're watching, listening, definitely write that one down. Take notes on that. Start with the things you hate and reverse engineer them. They might be the things that you love. I love that. So Gabe, I really believe that, I mean, you have a lot of unique abilities, like we talked about a little bit here. But two that really stand out to me is your ability to inspire, and you're an incredible teacher. I think I see your book behind you on your shelf too. You got your book back there, Flip Tips. I've watched you teach. I've watched you coach people in groups. I've watched you at roundtable events. You're an incredible teacher. So what you're doing now in the coaching space just makes so much sense to me, right? Ever since you told me when we were sitting at that cigar bar that your purpose in that venture is to help, I forget how many people you said, was to help X amount of people to leave their jobs. And I think like the phrase that you use, you'll be able to correct me here, was like to give them their wings. It's like, man, that's powerful, you know? And I knew that you'd absolutely crush it, right? So what was that phrase?
You're saying it. I got the chills as you're saying it. I want to see 50 people quit their jobs. That's my mandate as a mentor and coach, is to help 50 people leave their W-2. And so we're seeing that start to happen with people that I'm working with. And man, is it empowering. Like, to see them take flight is what it is. And incredible. And then to see the pictures of them with their kids 2 weeks later on a Tuesday morning at the park. Like, I'm getting the chills just telling this story, man. I get emotional. Like, at the park playing with their kids on a Tuesday. Like, just because they can, going away for a weekend with their dad on a rafting trip because they can, because now they have the freedom to do that, and they have the finances, like the economics make sense, because there's a lot of parts and pieces to it, right? I'm not saying Kirk can show us his desk and walk out tomorrow. You have the plan in place. You have to have a strategy. But yeah, once I started starting, I realized this is how I'm going to impact people.
I love it, man. I love it. And seeing you, watching you on that journey has been a blessing for me. Watching what you did in the fix and flip space and becoming like the best at pop tops, being the best at ADA levels, then teaching people how to do that. Now teaching people how to leave something that they hate and be more and do more. It's powerful, man. You're doing really important work.
Thanks, brother.
And I appreciate, again, having you on here. I think this is going to be a really impactful episode for a lot of people, man.
I hope so. I hope that it's prompting them to do some thinking. I know we tried to get a little bit tactical with how you do this, because I know a lot of people feel lost, and it's like, but this is what I have to do. I have the job. We have 2 kids. My wife's no longer working. We have 2 cars. We have a mortgage. And it's like, that's real shit. That's real life stuff. And so they're like, where do I even start? Well, the list, that's a good tactical, practical place to start with the what do I hate list, and then kind of reverse engineer. But also, we also talked about like your circle, like finding folks in your circle that'll sell you the dream, that'll lift you up. They will see in you what you probably don't see in you. What is it that you can talk about for hours without preparing? Like if I put you in front of a group and I was like, talk about something you're passionate about for the next hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, without notes. Like, what comes to mind immediately? That's probably an extension of your gift. Like, these are the kinds of things you just gotta think about. And it's in there. Like, your gift's in there somewhere. And what I actually do as a coach and mentor is I pull this out of folks, and then I get out of the way. That's what a good coach mentor is a facilitator. It's just somebody to like get out of the way, get them out of their own way, step out of the way, and then let people fly. Like, let them step into their gift and do what they were created to do. That's what I do as a coach, more so than anything else. Like the tactics and stuff, we can talk about that. But the real truth is it's within each person. I just gotta like help them extract that.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. I love it. And like I said, I know I've seen you do that. I've seen you coach. I've seen you mentor people and everything. And it's a real gift that you have. And I think that may be it at the core, that what you're what your responsibility or your job is being a mentor or a coach is exactly that, to help people get out of their own way and realize within themselves their skills and strengths and everything. But you're downplaying it a little bit. There's a little bit of, skill behind it too.
The tactics, the tactics are important to an extent as well, like, because otherwise you spend all your time manifesting and visualizing and no time executing, which is one of the cautions with like the conference thing we were talking about. Is like, you could be high on life at these things. You can read a shit ton of books, but if all you're ever doing is consuming and not executing, well, then you're serving nobody. That's just mental masturbation.
That's right. So I love that phrase, by the way.
It's, like you're sitting there and it makes you feel good, right? It's the dopamine hit of the things you're gonna do. Your gunnas, like, and so to your point, like, as a coach and mentor, there's also an accountability piece, and you got to hold people accountable and say, hey, you said you were gonna do that thing. Like, where do you stand with that? Is it done? Did you start it? What challenges are you having that we can work together to address? That type of stuff too, for sure.
I love it. So for any of our viewers or listeners today, or listening to a recording of this in the future, anybody that may be at their job still, right, and looking for more, looking to do more, because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of people on here that already are entrepreneurs, already own businesses, already in the real estate space. But for those people that are just trying to get started, what would you say is a real good next step for them into making that a reality, since that's one of the things that you're uniquely good at, is giving people those wings and getting them out of the job that they hate? What would you say the next step for them is?
So tactically, some of those examples make sense. If it's create the list, or think on something that you are super passionate and can speak about without notes, without preparation. Start journaling on those things. Take a blank page, go somewhere by yourself, get away from the noise, put on some music you like, and just scribe and just see what comes out. And it'll start to evolve there. To take that and have that start to look like something that you can execute upon, you likely need to work with someone. And I'm not selling you on the concept of a coach or a mentor. What I'm suggesting is that it's probably not going to come from your existing circle. Like, you don't solve problems with the same mentality that got you into the problem. So in this situation, you're stuck. Everybody around you is stuck. So you got to get the hell away from all those stuck people. Like, that water cooler nonsense, the Game of Thrones bullshit, whatever it is that they talk about in the Real Housewives of New Jersey nonsense, whatever that is,
it's not getting you anywhere.
Yeah, get away from that stuff. So take your blank page, take your notes, and go find a new circle. Elevate your circle. Get on the phone with some folks that are doing the things that you want to do at the level you want to do them, and start speaking to them about how they got to where they are. Listen to this stuff.
Find the people in this group. Talk to the people in this group. Listen to our episodes. Follow me. Follow Gabe. I meant to put your link below. I got your website there, GabeDaSilva.com. Where can people find you on Facebook and Instagram?
It's at Real Gabe DaSilva. Okay. Is my handle on the platforms. And it's still me. So if they message me, they'll get me, and it'll be me in the comments and me in the DMs. And I'm happy to engage with people about this very thing. I literally just had a call yesterday with the guy on this very topic, and he's approaching his 50th birthday, and he's bored, and he makes good money, and he's like, this is just not fulfilling. And it's just, he's at that fork in the road where he can lock in for the next 13 years and coast to retirement, or he can reinvent himself, step into his gift, and build another thing. 10, 12 years is a long time, man. There's time to go build another thing. So I was really excited to be on the phone with him yesterday. And that's the kind of stuff we do as coaches and mentors. That's my mandate. That's why I said what I said. 50 people leave their W-2. It's my goal is to help see that happen.
That's awesome, man. And I'm so excited as soon as you hit that goal and simultaneously set a new one, because I know you're going to crush that and then just move the bar higher. We'll have to have you back on for another episode and break that down and what that journey was like and everything, because that's important work that you're doing. We talk about it a lot. Again, going back to the mastermind group that you and I were a part of, right? I attribute a lot of my success to the circle that I was fortunate enough to have around, you being one of those really deeply impactful people to me. But the reality is I would have never met you had I not seeked out a mentor, a group to be a part of, right? Like, you have to get uncomfortable. The reality is it's not a comfortable thing, especially going to a lot of the paid events that you and I have been to, whether it's a Tony Robbins event or a roundtable event like we met at. It's an uncomfortable thing in and of itself. You got to spend a bunch of money to go hang out with a bunch of strangers and talk about really deep things that a lot of times you kind of just want to suppress. Like, I don't want to think about, my screwed up things that happened to me in my childhood and everything. Like, that's not where my mind wants to be. But that's where the change happens. That's where really deep, meaningful things come from. So I would definitely encourage, this whole show is not about selling anything to anybody, but I do strongly believe in your message, Gabe, and what you're doing and your journey and, your vision with it. I would encourage anybody that is looking to better themselves, especially, specifically in the fix and flip space, right? Reach out to Gabe. Definitely hit him up. He's got a lot to share with you.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and serve.
Absolutely, Gabe. Love having you on. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
No, I hit them with plenty. I think I hit them.
We hit them with a lot, man.
A lot of homework, but do something. Folks.
Do
if
something.
You're listening,
Take
do something.
shots.
Do anything. Take action in the direction you want to go. That's it. We can't want it for you. So you got to want it enough to take that first step.
That's so true, man. I love it. Again, Gabe, thanks so much for being on here today. This is the Revamp Project. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks so much, Gabe.
Anybody.